My girlfriend insisted I apologize to her male best friend for upsetting him. I agreed. I visited his home and in front of his wife said, "I'm truly sorry. I'm sorry I kept quiet about the affair you had last summer. I should have never hidden that truth for you." My girlfriend is Lauren, spoken with the kind of righteous indignation only someone utterly blind to their own hypocrisy could muster. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest, her chin raised as if she were pronouncing judgment from a bench I had never agreed to stand before. And sitting beside her, nodding solemnly like a saint wronged by the world, was Mark, her legendary male best friend. A man who believed his every opinion was a gift, and that I should feel honored to live in the same orbit. I remember staring at them that night, the two of them forming a united front on the couch of our shared apartment, my apartment, technically, while I stood like a defendant awaiting sentencing. The absurdity of it all pulsed through the room so thick I could taste it. They acted as though I'd committed some violent betrayal, when all I had done was ask Mark to text before using the spare key Lauren had insisted he keep. He'd walked in on me fresh out of the shower the previous morning. No knock. No warning. Nothing but an exaggerated gasp and a smug smile that made me feel like a trespasser in my own home. But in Lauren's narrative, I was the villain. I was petty. I was insecure for daring to expect a sliver of privacy. They sat there with the expectation that I would crumble, again. That I would bend myself into an apology for daring to push back against the chaotic ecosystem they had built, where Mark's comfort mattered more than my dignity. What neither of them knew, what had been simmering underneath months of forced politeness, was that I had been carrying a secret so volatile that once spoken, it would split their little world right down the middle. And I had kept that secret for his sake. Mark's sake. It felt almost poetic. Last summer, Lauren had pushed me to join Mark for a guys' night. She framed it as an opportunity for me to bond with him, to prove that I wasn't resistant to their friendship. I already knew it would be miserable, but I went anyway, partly for Lauren, partly because I wanted to see for myself why she considered him the gold standard of humanity. I shouldn't have bothered. After a few ridiculously overpriced drinks I paid for, Mark loosened up, his arrogance dissolving into something sloppier, riskier. He leaned toward me across the bar, eyes glassy, and said he had a secret. A wild one. One he claimed he could only share with a man who understood discretion. I didn't understand discretion the way he meant it. I understood integrity. And what he confessed had neither. He told me, with a tipsy grin and a tone of victory, that he had been cheating on his wife, Nora. A woman so gentle and soft-spoken she could calm a thunderstorm just by standing in the doorway. He joked about it. Actually joked. The thrill of sneaking around. The hotel rooms paid in cash. The burner email account he'd created. All of it delivered like a man bragging about a goal he'd scored. He assumed I was harmless. Some quiet placeholder in Lauren's life. A man who would absorb his sin and lock it away forever. But the next morning, hungover and panicked, he called me like a man grabbing the edge of a cliff. He begged me to keep the secret from everyone, especially Lauren and Nora. His desperation was almost pathetic. I agreed not because I respected him, but because I didn't see myself as the arbiter of his marriage. And because, yes, I believed in balance. In leverage. In the knowledge that sometimes truths had to be stored away until the moment they mattered. That moment arrived sooner than even I could have predicted. 2 days before the mandatory apology, Lauren rehearsed the speech she expected me to give. She crafted it like a playwright convinced of her own brilliance. I was to admit jealousy. Confess insecurity. Pledge to be more welcoming, more trusting, more malleable. I nodded and pretended to absorb the script, but inside, a strange calm settled over me. And under that calm, anticipation. Because the way she outlined the scene, the way she insisted it happen not in our apartment but in Mark's house, in front of his wife, with witnesses. She unknowingly built the perfect stage for the truth she thought I would never dare use. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted a public display of my obedience. But she didn't understand that submission and honesty are not the same thing. The moment she gave me that stage, the outcome shifted permanently. Saturday arrived too quickly for her liking and too slowly for mine. Lauren was almost vibrating with satisfaction as we sat in the car outside Mark's suburban home. The sky was streaked with the last pastel remnants of sunset, warm and peaceful in a way that mocked the storm coiling inside the house we were about to walk into. I had made one critical call before we left. I phoned Nora. She had sounded genuinely relieved that I wanted to clear things up. Her voice was soft but bright, the kind of tone people use when they think conflict can be resolved with a conversation and goodwill. I almost felt guilty for what was about to hit her life like a meteor. Almost. Inside, Mark greeted us with the aura of a man preparing to forgive a forgiven underling. He had that faint smirk, the one that said he believed he'd won. "We're glad you're here," he said with a noble sigh, as if he were presiding over an intervention. Lauren squeezed my arm like a director reminding her actor of his cue. We all settled in the living room. A quiet, expectant hush fell over us. I felt everyone's eyes on me, Lauren's sharp with control, Mark's smug with triumph, Nora's warm with naive goodwill. I stood slowly. Deliberately. "Mark," I began, letting my voice tremble just enough to make them relax. "We're here because I owe you an apology." Lauren exhaled in relief, her smile spreading like victory blooming in real time. Mark sat back, ready to absorb the praise he assumed was coming. I let silence hang. I wanted them to lean in. "You've been an important presence in our lives," I continued, shifting my gaze toward Nora. "And I haven't fully appreciated the bond you and Lauren share." Lauren nodded like a queen. Mark puffed his chest. And then, very gently, very intentionally, I lowered myself to one knee. Lauren gasped, overwhelmed with triumph. Mark's eyes widened, almost glittering. But I didn't look at him. I looked at Nora. Her expression softened with surprise, then confusion. "Nora," I said, my voice steady and clear. "My real apology is to you." The room froze. Lauren's smile vanished. Mark's smug face drained of color. "Because the worst thing I've done," I continued, "is keep a secret from you. A secret I never should have protected." I saw Nora's throat tighten. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the affair Mark had last summer. With a woman from his PR firm. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the hotels, the burner email, the details he bragged about to me while he was drunk." The silence that followed was not silence, it was implosion. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something close to peace. The silence that followed my words felt alive. It pressed in on my ears, on my chest, on the back of my neck. No one moved. No one breathed. The clock on the wall kept ticking, indifferent to the fact that a marriage had just been split open between 1 second and the next. Nora stared at me as if she wasn't sure whether she'd heard correctly. Her lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes flicked to Mark, searching his face for a denial that never came. He looked like someone who'd just been shoved out of an airplane without a parachute, mouth open, fingers twitching, mind scrambling for a story that didn't exist. Lauren reacted first. "What the hell are you doing?" she shrieked. The sound cut through the stillness like shattered glass. "Daniel, stop. Stop it right now. He's lying, Nora. He's making this up to hurt Mark. This is sick." I didn't look at her. I kept my focus on Nora, because this wasn't about Lauren anymore. It wasn't even about Mark. It was about the woman who had been unknowingly sharing her life with a man who treated fidelity like a joke. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you," I said quietly. "I shouldn't have had to be. But I'm done protecting a lie that you never agreed to be part of." Mark finally found his voice. Daniel, what the hell, man, he snapped, his voice cracking at the edges. You're twisting things. You misunderstood. I was drunk. I was venting. There was no, Mark, I cut in gently. Stop. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. This is the part where you'll say I'm making it up, I continued, still speaking to Nora. So I kept something. Just in case. I opened the text thread, scrolled once, then held the screen out to her. I didn't move closer, I let her decide if she wanted to see it. She did. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took the phone. Her eyes scanned the messages slowly, her brow knitting as she read. My text from months ago, I won't tell anyone about your affair, but you owe me. His reply, thanks, man. It's done. Never mention it again. No metaphors. No ambiguity. No wiggle room. Lauren lunged toward Nora as if she could somehow intercept the words already burned into the screen. Nora, don't take this out of context, she babbled. This is Daniel being dramatic. You know how he gets. He probably typed that as a joke. Right, Daniel? Right? I said nothing. Nora's eyes stayed fixed on the phone a moment longer. Then she slowly looked up at her husband. Whatever softness had been in her expression earlier was gone. What remained was empty. Not rage, not tears. Just a quiet, stunned vacancy. Is this true? She asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Mark opened his mouth. Closed it. His jaw worked, trying to assemble some half-plausible lie. I watched him cycle through options, all of them collapsing before they reached his tongue. Nora, it's not, he began, then faltered. It was complicated. That was all she needed. She handed my phone back without another word. I slipped it into my pocket and rose to my feet. My apology is done, I said softly. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. I didn't wait for permission to leave. I didn't wait for their anger, or defenses, or accusations. I turned, walked toward the front door, and stepped out into the cool evening air. Behind me, the house was silent for 1 beat, 2, 3, then the shouting started. I shut the door gently and walked to the car. Lauren followed seconds later, storming out like a tornado in human form. What is wrong with you? She screeched as she yanked the car door open and slid into the passenger seat. You ruined everything. You humiliated him. You blindsided Nora. Do you have any idea what you've done? I started the engine. Yes, I said. I told the truth. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. The ride home was a blur of accusations, tears, and frantic justifications. According to Lauren, I'd betrayed Mark, betrayed her, betrayed some unspoken code of loyalty that apparently required me to stay quiet about an affair indefinitely, as long as it kept her best friend comfortable. You did this to get back at me, she spat, wiping her cheeks angrily. Because you're jealous. Because you can't handle how close Mark and I are. I kept my eyes on the road. If you want to believe that, I replied, go ahead. But we both know I didn't say anything until I was forced into apologizing to the man who's been walking into my home whenever he feels like it, complaining about his wife while cheating on her behind her back. You wanted a performance. You got one. Just not the script you wrote. She turned away, staring out the window, shaking her head. She didn't speak for the rest of the drive. The silence between us was no longer tense, it was terminal. By the time we reached the apartment, something in me had already decided there was no going back. The fallout began before I'd even taken off my shoes. Messages started pouring in within an hour of getting home. The first wave came from Lauren's friends, the ones who adored Mark, defended their friendship, and treated me like a mildly inconvenient background character. I heard what you did. That was cruel, Daniel. Why would you make up something like that about Mark? You humiliated him in front of his wife. That's psychotic. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the first message, attached a screenshot of the text exchange with Mark, and hit send. No explanations. No long defenses. Just the evidence. I did the same with the next message. And the next. And the next. Each time, the pattern repeated itself: outrage. Screenshot. Silence. The angry text slowed. Then stopped entirely. Truth is a simple thing. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg. It just stands there, undeniable. The second wave came from Lauren. Unlike her friends, she couldn't be silenced by a screenshot. She turned our shared email account and my private inbox into a dumping ground for every emotion she could weaponize. Denial came first. You're a liar. I know you faked that text. You're disgusting. I will never forgive you for this. A few hours later, anger. Are you happy now? You destroyed a marriage. You destroyed my friendship. You destroyed everything. I hope you feel powerful. Then bargaining. If you admit you exaggerated or misunderstood, maybe Mark and Nora can work through this. Maybe we still can. Just say you messed up. We can fix it. Then despair. I can't believe you did this. I don't even recognize you. The man I loved wouldn't be so vindictive. Finally, a twisted acceptance. Fine. Maybe Mark slipped up, but everyone makes mistakes. That doesn't mean you had to nuke his life to prove a point. You could have talked to me first. You went nuclear to hurt me. I didn't answer. Not once. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't drag me back into the same gravity well I just fought my way out of. 2 days later, an email arrived that made all of it worth it. The sender, Nora. The subject line was simple: thank you. And also, I don't know. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. When I finally did, her words were calm, measured, no rage, no theatrics. She wrote that she didn't know whether to thank me or hate me. She was furious that her life had been shattered, but she was also relieved to finally see what had been happening behind her back. She'd gone searching after we left: bank statements, unexplained charges, time gaps. She'd found everything. Yes, she wrote. It was all true. He'd been lying to me for months. I confronted him. He tried to spin it. He failed. He's not living here anymore. I've hired a lawyer. At the end of her email, she added, I'm sorry for the way Lauren and Mark treated you. You deserved better. I hope you get a life that reflects that. I read that last line 3 times. It felt like validation and closure rolled into one. With the moral part settled, I turned to the practical one: Lauren still living in my apartment. The lease was in my name. Every bill. Every piece of paperwork. When we moved in together, I'd offered to add her to the lease. She'd brushed it off, insisting it wasn't necessary. We're together, she'd said. We don't need all that technical stuff. Now the technical stuff mattered. I met with a lawyer, laid everything out, and asked for a clean, legally airtight way to end it. He drafted a formal notice giving her 30 days to move out. No emotion. No narrative. Just dates, terms, and signatures. I handed her the envelope when she got home one evening. Her eyes skimmed the top line, then widened. You're evicting me? She asked, stunned. I'm asking you to move out, I said. Legally. Properly. I'm not leaving. This place is mine. We're done, Lauren. She stared at me for a long time, looking for any sign I was bluffing. I wasn't. That night, our home became a war zone without raised voices. She blasted music at odd hours, left dirty dishes everywhere, forgot trash bags until the apartment smelled faintly of rot. She left sticky notes on the counters, passive-aggressive messages in loopy handwriting. Hope you're happy. Enjoy your empty life. Mark says you need therapy. I didn't respond. Not to the notes, not to the muttered comments, not to the attempts to provoke arguments over nothing. I packed a bag and began staying most nights at a friend's place across town. Distance made everything clearer. The apartment, once loud with Mark's unannounced intrusions and Lauren's constant dramatics, seemed to exhale now that I wasn't in it. I visited only when necessary, to pick up clothes, personal documents, or check on the place itself. It was on one of those visits, a week before her move-out deadline, that I found her trying to load my TV into her car. I pulled into the parking lot late in the afternoon and spotted her near the trunk of her sedan. She was struggling to angle the television, the expensive one I'd saved up for, into the back seat. My speakers were already resting inside, wrapped in a blanket. For a moment, I just watched. Something inside me wanted to see how far she'd go if she thought I wasn't there. Then I stepped out of the car. Need a hand? I asked calmly. She jolted, spinning around. The guilt flashed on her face for a split second before morphing into indignation. I'm just taking what's mine, she snapped. That's not yours, I replied, walking closer. You didn't pay for that TV. Or those speakers. I paid for half, she shot back. We've shared everything. I'm not leaving here with nothing. I stopped a few feet away, keeping my voice level. You didn't pay for half, I said. I have the bank statement for the purchase, Lauren. My card. My money. You liked it. You used it. That doesn't make it yours. She looked past me, as if hoping some neighbor would appear as an audience. You're being petty, she hissed. After everything you did, you're really going to argue over a TV? No, I said. I'm drawing a boundary. Those are different things. We stared at each other for a long moment. If you put them back inside, I continued quietly, this ends here. You move out like we agreed. No police. No extra drama. Just two people parting ways. But if you try to leave with them, I'll call the cops, show them the receipt, and add, attempted theft, to the list of things this month has already broken. Her face crumpled into rage, then wilted into something like exhaustion. Finally, wordlessly, she pulled the TV out of the car and set it carefully on the ground. You're cruel, she said under her breath. You act so calm, but you're cruel. I'm done being walked on, I corrected. There's a difference. She didn't answer. She just lifted the speakers from the back seat, carried them upstairs, and dropped them inside the door with a dull thud. A week later, she was gone. The day I walked into the apartment after her final boxes had been removed, the silence was different. Not tense. Not heavy. Just quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar and strangely kind. No Mark's shoes by the door. No Lauren's coat draped over the chair she always tossed it onto. No faint lingering smell of her perfume in the hallway. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I wandered from room to room, almost disbelieving that it was the same place. The living room looked bigger somehow. The bedroom felt less like a stage for arguments and more like a room where a person could finally sleep. I walked over to the front door, pulled out my key, and fingers steady, removed the spare keys from the hook on the wall. Mark's key had hung there for months, a small metal symbol of my lack of boundaries. I stared at it for a moment. Then I took a new keyring from my pocket, fresh from the hardware store, and swapped my old locks out for the new ones. The metal clicked and scraped, bolts sliding into place with a satisfying finality. When I tried the old key afterward, it turned uselessly in my fingers. For the first time in a long time, my home felt like mine. And somewhere out there, Mark and Lauren were dealing with the fallout of a truth they'd tried so hard to bury. I didn't know yet how completely their worlds would unravel. That would become clearer in the months to come. All I knew in that moment was simple: I had chosen honesty over comfort. And I was finally willing to live with the consequences. 6 months have passed since the night I knelt in front of Nora and told the truth that Mark thought would stay buried forever. Half a year since Lauren shrieked at me in outrage, since her friends flooded my phone with accusations and righteous fury, since the locks on my apartment clicked shut behind her for the final time. I didn't know, back then, that I was closing the door on an entire chapter of dysfunction. I'd grown so used to that I'd mistaken it for normal. In those early weeks, the quiet in my apartment felt strange, too open, too still. There were mornings I'd wake up expecting to hear Lauren pacing, complaining about work, or calling Mark to update him on the latest non-event in her life. I didn't miss them, but I had lived in their noise for so long that silence felt like a foreign country. But slowly, that silence became something else, an invitation. A space to breathe. A space to think. A space to finally exist without being compared, corrected, or dismissed. I started taking long, aimless walks after work. Sometimes I'd wander through the city until the streetlights blinked on and the world softened around the edges. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't a battlefield. The absence of chaos felt like a warm room I could finally step into. Lauren tried to claw back into my life for a while, emails dripping with resentment, nostalgia, and everything in between. She replayed every fight from her perspective. She rewrote the story of our relationship in real time, trying to convince me that she'd been the victim of my cold detachment, that I'd ruined her life out of spite. But when someone has spent years telling you who you are, you eventually learn to stop listening. And I did. I deleted each message without replying. One by one, her attempts lost momentum. Then they stopped altogether. I haven't heard from her in months. What happened to her afterward trickled to me through acquaintances. She moved back in with her parents, took a low-level PR job after burning too many bridges, and retreated into a version of herself that could no longer hide behind Mark's flattering spotlight. Her life, once curated for performance, had collapsed into something she couldn't frame or embellish. And for the first time, I was not her fallback plan. Not her emotional punching bag. Not her stagehand. I was simply gone. Mark's collapse was harsher. More dramatic. More deserved. When Nora filed for divorce, she did so with a precision that made even me flinch. She hired a sharp attorney, gathered the financial records, the text screenshots, the receipts. She hadn't just lost trust, she'd found anger, clarity, and a kind of cold determination that only the betrayed understand. Mark fought. Then bargained. Then fell apart when he realized that half-truths and charm don't hold up in court. Nora got the house. She got a large share of assets. She kept their cat, Milo, who, according to mutual friends, never once asked where Mark had gone. Mark now lives in a cramped apartment with peeling paint and a view of the building across the alley. His friends distanced themselves when they learned about the affair, and even more so when they realized he'd manipulated Lauren, and through her, me, for years. He tried, in the beginning, to blame me. To paint me as some vindictive mastermind who waited for the perfect moment to strike. But the more he talked, the more people saw through him. His reputation dissolved. Not suddenly, but steadily, like ink bleeding across water. Last I heard, he's been attending therapy reluctantly. He calls it an obligation, not a choice. He claims the world is unfair. That people judge too quickly. That Nora overreacted. But the thing about truth is simple, it does not care for sympathy. He dug the grave. I just stopped covering it. As for me, my life didn't explode. It expanded. With Lauren gone and the apartment quiet, I threw myself into my work. Projects that once exhausted me felt lighter. My creativity sharpened. My focus deepened. I no longer spent hours justifying myself, no longer braced for another round of subtle arguments or mark-based critiques. That space inside me, the one that had been crowded with frustration, became a place where new things could grow. What surprised me most, though, was how naturally Nora and I found ourselves orbiting back toward each other. It started with her email. The one where she didn't know whether to thank me or resent me. A month later, she reached out again, this time softer, more grounded. She said she was processing things, that she appreciated my honesty, that she hoped I was doing well. I replied. Then she replied. Then a conversation began. No drama. No triangulation. No hidden agendas. Just two people who had survived the same storm, sitting on opposite sides of a broken friendship, trying to make sense of who they were now. We met for coffee. That first meeting was cautious, both of us aware of the strange, delicate nature of what connected us. We didn't talk much about Mark or Lauren. Instead, we talked about work, art, music, the small but meaningful ways life changes when you leave toxicity behind. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months, she told me later. A week after that coffee, she asked if I wanted to join her for dinner. Not romantic. Not heavy. Just two people sharing a meal because it felt good not to pretend. That dinner became 2. Then 3. Then something else, slow, steady, unforced. What grew between us wasn't built on what we had lost but on what we discovered about ourselves. We both valued honesty. We both valued kindness. We both valued the quiet strength of someone who listens without interrupting. Our connection felt nothing like the relationships we had just escaped. It felt gentle. Safe. Easy. Nora is still careful, she has every right to be, but when she smiles at me now, it's not the smile of someone using me to fill a void. It's the smile of someone choosing a new path because it finally feels free of shadows. And me? I never expected to feel grounded again. Not this soon. Not this wholly. But here I am. Sometimes I think back to that night in Mark's living room, the night Lauren thought would be my humiliation, the night she believed I would beg for forgiveness in front of the man who had disrespected my home and my boundaries for years. She wrote the script. Mark prepared the stage. Nora opened her home. And I improvised the ending. Kneeling had never been a symbol of surrender. It was a mirror they never expected me to hold up. When I apologized, it wasn't to Mark for bruising his ego. It was to Nora for letting someone else's secret threaten her peace. If there's one thing I learned, one truth I will carry for the rest of my life, it's this: people who demand your silence are terrified of your honesty. People who demand your humility fear their own exposure. People who treat your boundaries like insults were never planning to respect you in the first place. Lauren wanted me obedient. Mark wanted me compliant. Nora wanted the truth. And I wanted a life that didn't require me to lose pieces of myself to keep the peace. In the end, we each got what we asked for. I walk into my apartment now, my apartment, finally, and I feel something I haven't felt in years: stillness. Sincerity. Ownership. The locks are new. The key is mine alone. The air is calm. The furniture sits exactly where I left it. No footsteps I didn't authorize. No voices rising in self-righteous drama. No friend of a partner barging in with unsolicited opinions. Just peace. Pure, uncomplicated peace. I didn't expect that telling the truth would rebuild my life. I didn't expect that exposing a lie would free two people, Nora and myself, from a cycle we didn't realize we were trapped in. But sometimes the truth really is a demolition. Sometimes destruction clears the ground for something better to grow. And sometimes the apology someone demands becomes the apology someone else deserved all along. That night, Lauren wanted me to kneel. She wanted submission. She wanted a show. What she got was justice. What Nora got was freedom. And what I got, finally, was myself.